Welcome to week 5. We have a complicated issue this week. Does affirmative action advance racial equality? I'd like to begin the discussion by asking a simple question. Does discrimination still exist in America? I think that we'd be hard put to find someone who really truly believes that discrimination does not exist, although I'm sure there are some there. A reasonable person would conclude, or at least our polls would show, that we do see discrimination still existing in America, especially after some of the recent events in Ferguson, Missouri. Well, according to the White House, discrimination still exists for women in America in the sense that they only earn 77% of their male counterparts. African American women, it's even worse, 64% of white male counterparts. And for Latino women, it's even worse than that. They only earn 56% of their white male counterparts. That last slide was brought, the data was from the White House. This is from the Economic Policy Institute, and they would say that in 2008, black men earned only 71% of what white men earned, and that their median hourly wage for full-time black male workers was $14.90 an hour. Compared to white workers, it was $20.84 an hour. And the director of EPI figured in a lot of different factors, and still at the end of the day, according to him, it turns out that being black or Latino presumably matters. Color of the skin matters. So what is affirmative action? It's basically a method to help overcome the historic discrimination that's occurred. And there are two different definitions here, one from Cornell Law School and one from the ACLU. ACLU focuses on color and women, but it's not necessarily limited to just color and women. We could say that discrimination still exists for people of different sexual orientation or disability, religion, or age. For example, I'm 60 years old. I ride a bicycle, average just under 11 miles a day. I play competitive volleyball. There's not a whole lot I can do that people who are younger can do that I can't do within reason. I've seen people in the military I thought were extremely out of shape, and I knew that I could do what they did. Why can't I enlist in the military? I could be doing the jobs that don't require me to carry a 100-pound pack. But the question is the discrimination against me as a person 60 historic? And that might be a little bit of a harder issue to make than, say, someone who's African American, because traditionally, I would say until the last couple of generations, someone who was my age really couldn't do the physical things that someone younger could do. And so that brings us to this interesting point, the free market approach versus the government assistance. In some of our earlier weeks, we talked about, especially when it comes to interpreting the Constitution, two different ways of thinking about it. One way is to assume that the free market will correct the problem. In other words, the consumer says, I won't buy something from a company that practices discrimination against anyone. On the other side of it would be to say, well, that hasn't necessarily worked, or certainly hasn't worked fast enough. This is where government would come in. But I want you to think of this a little bit in these terms, because that really helps us identify the philosophical approach. And there are clearly people that believe that the free market is the way to make that determination. That if, for instance, women outnumber men right now in America, why couldn't they band together and say, we will not buy a product from a company that pays its women less than men? Maybe that's a question of organizing. Or is it a question of maybe the government needs to step in? There certainly are people who feel that they do not have the same opportunities and are underrepresented, don't have the money or the power to be able to make that kind of a change or to organize in the way that companies with billions and billions of dollars can. So it's an interesting way of thinking about it, but these themes overlap, and you'll see it throughout our term, these kinds of things like free market versus government.